that like somebody out there that people would still follow, like Matt Gaetz. And she's like, oh, well, the Republicans that I'm hearing from friends at church is that they say that some of their nuttier friends are saying that they want to load up on ammo and supplies for August, and that Trump's talking about being reinstated. So I started Googling it, and I see that it all starts with wealthy pillow executive that so far I'm hearing that that the people in the law enforcement community haven't found any direct threats, but they're monitoring things on social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Trump people are the Trump people who like still genuinely believe right now that he won or that the election was somehow faulty are actually just like delusional, I think is the word that I want to use there specifically.
Yeah, I think
They're just not
they
connecting with reality anymore, considering how much scrutiny this election has gone under. And, like, literally the only fraud cases we've been able to find have been on the right at that. So, like, it's wild how how conservatives specifically will, like, twist themselves ass over head to just make it work somehow, make it fit. They'll lie, they'll cheat, they'll twist it, and then they'll go, no, it's the Dems doing that stuff. And it's like, no, you are living in a fantasy land at this point, you know?
Yeah, and this is the scary part. Why am I'm hitting refresh chat and it's not working. Oh, there we are. No, it's still just giving me a white bar in chat. I can't see my chat. Let me check my own dashboard here. There we go.
Also, as a side note, 0 drop frames. We fixed our internet.
Yeah, my bitrate right now is totally sucking, and I'm showing myself frozen in my own.
At the very least, I'll have a clean copy. So
yeah, that's at least the good part. But yeah, it's the whole what they're doing is they're specifically trying to degrade the military itself.
Mm-hmm.
Largely because Secretary Austin decided to crack down on extremism in the military after hearing that active duty military members and veterans participated in the Capitol riot. So Ted Cruz decides that what he's going to do is retweet an ad that started with Russian propaganda
that thing.
That
oh my
their
god.
Military while degrading ours.
It's nuts too, because like it's not like our military doesn't have ads that are similar. We absolutely do have ads like that. But they picked the most, like, and mind you, the military is really smart about how they recruit, right? They do have the, like, hyper masculine, they have the hyper masculine, like, strong man, military, guns and tanks sort of ads. But they also realize that in order to recruit enough people, they do kind of have to also appeal to the people who, like, give a shit about what America's actual ideals are, which includes equal rights for all people. And so they have to kind of also have these ads that appeal more to, I guess, if you want to call it the left, then the left. They have to, like, they don't, and in the military, they don't really give a shit, like, the system. Not the people in it, necessarily, but, like, they don't, when they're training you to wield a gun, when they're training you to go to war, when they're training you to be a medic, or, you know, a pilot, or, you know, whatever else, they don't really care what your sexuality is, you know? They're like, can you do this job? It doesn't really matter if you like dicks or vagina at that point, you know?
Yeah, and the video that Ted Cruz shared got spread onto pundits on YouTube repeating Cruz's claims because what the Republican base want is to follow Trump and follow Mike Lindell and listen to what they're saying.
Mhm.
When that's crazy. You're hearing things like, I don't go on Parler, but I think that I'll take the word of the FBI that they're saying some crazy shit on there.
Mhm.
Because I'm just like, for research, I'm just like, I don't want to give them my social security number because I don't want it to get hacked.
Right.
So I'll just take for some crazy stuff on that site.
I mean, there was, you know, at least I and my circles have seen like some really crazy shit there. You know, that's where a lot of the anti-vax stuff was. That's where a lot of this Trump definitely won fucking cope comes from. It's like just this little echo chamber, and they say they're for free speech, but if you say anything like even remotely anti-Christian, if you say anything remotely leftist, they will fucking ban you in a second. Like, didn't you guys create the platform so you could have free speech without banning anybody? Wasn't that the whole fucking point? Of course, it's never actually the point with these types.
That's
It's never actually the point.
That's the same thing with Gab. It's like free speech.
Right.
What about boobs? No. It's basically just an echo chamber, and they're not particularly good to their own users.
These free speech platforms, once again, they're just not about free speech. They're about the speech that they want.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that would be fine. It kind of goes back to the ideal of if you're honest about it, then fine. If you're like, this is a space for people on the right or whatever, that's fine. But if you're saying free speech, maybe actually like try to live up to that ideal as best as you can. Mind that even amongst the people who tend to be like more hardcore, I won't say the most because I know there's some people who are like fucking nuts wacko out there, but even among the most like hardcore free speech kind of people, like people realize that there's limits when you start like infringing on other people's rights. Like if you're directly threatening somebody, I think most people, even free speech advocates, would argue that that's not free speech. You're threatening somebody. You're
actual threat. You cannot state fighting words to somebody's face. Right. You cannot post child pornography. Those are things out there that the courts have said are not our speech that's not covered by the First Amendment.
Right, and there gets grayer lines around where like how hate speechy can you get before it is crossing over the lines into direct basically threats. Right. Until you're violating other people's rights. And that's where a lot of people end up disagreeing, and a lot of platforms start putting down hard lines where people might not necessarily agree they should be. But in the end, that's up to those platforms to decide what they're going to allow on their site or not.
Well, here's the thing. Any fascist movement is always going to wind up using direct and actionable threats to promote, to basically strengthen itself.
But not at the start. And that's where you get into the, like, dog whistling, which is literally the function of dog whistling is to say something without saying it. So that anybody who doesn't know what your actual meaning underneath those words are will be more likely to come to your defense when people who can hear the dog whistle, who can see the meaning underneath, who can read between those lines and knows what you're actually saying, so they look crazy.
Yes, like when Trump, when he was on January 6th, when he was saying to go out and cheer on the people who are on our side in the Capitol, but not the people who aren't. I was rewatching the speech today.
Yeah. He said a lot of stuff that's like.
It has just referred to he just referred to the Capitol riot a few days ago as a love fest.
Yeah. Oh, and and when he was like, "We love you guys," I was like, "Mask off? Are we just admitting it now? I mean, good on you for being honest."
Yeah, it's the fact that when it comes to what speech platforms will allow, Twitter have banned the vast majority of right-wing extremist accounts. Fuentes was
Actually,
just the new one that got banned, and he directly participated in direct incitement beyond what
who
Trump
did?
was saying. Nick Fuentes over he was engaged
Yeah. He used to
in
be the only
actual
checkmark rightoid.
yeah.
He was
He
the
was
one with it.
actually
He was the Nazi with a checkmark for representation.
yeah, he was actually engaging in actual violent rhetoric on January 6th with a separate crowd that wound up marching towards the Capitol that went beyond just what Trump was saying. He was deliberately engaged in incitement.
I mean, I'd argue that Trump was too. He was just like a tiny,
Trump was trying to code his language
a
there.
little bit.
Fuentes, on the other hand, was being explicit about it, and he got banned from Twitter for it because I forgot if it was the Southern Poverty Law Center or Anti-Defamation League who posted about the stuff that he was saying on Twitter.
It wouldn't surprise me if both of them did, honestly.
Yeah.
Actually, I heard a while ago about there's this issue with the Twitter algorithm specifically because they could implement an algorithm to basically fucking exile all the Nazis that are on Twitter. But they specifically said they can't actually implement it because it would catch too many Republican senators and Republican government officials within this algorithm, and they would get banned too.
Well, yeah, that's an issue. Is you're dealing with like senators, like just or not senators, but like some some senators, some governors, like DeSantis, and some of the stuff that he's been doing, like his anti-protest law, which was just dumb, and the fact that when you wind up with massive protests against the Cuban government of Miami, he permits it because those are people out there who are not directly threatening the Republican Party and its values.
Mm-hmm.
So that's permissible for them to shut down a highway. It's so a lot of the stuff that he's said has been kind of crazy. A lot of the stuff out of Ted Cruz's mouth as of late has been crazy.
Yeah.
Lindsey Graham used to be sane.
How do these people keep getting voted in? That's my question.
Because
like
people
how?
like hearing that. That's what the base wants to hear. Does it matter that it's unpopular amongst the majority of citizens? I don't know. I don't know how they would keep winning over independents. I think just voter suppression.
Well,
And
to be fair, a lot of independents independents that are more left-leaning seem to be okay with voting for Democrats in a sort of, lesser evil sort of kind of thing. Whereas I feel like right independents are a little bit more likely to stick to their guns and vote independent if they have an independent person to vote for. Just because I don't know, I maybe this is just personal anecdote, right? But I feel like while people who identify explicitly as Republican or on the right are more willing to tolerate further right beliefs within their own party, like explicitly, I feel like the people who lean right who are independent are so like that seems like such a core part of their fucking identity and something they won't compromise on at all. Whereas I feel like people who are independent but on the left kind of see like a bigger picture to everything and try their best to just have the best outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at the same time, when you're dealing with when you deal with the Trump Reed-7 conspiracies and the fact that Trump is still holding rallies around the country, when you look at what kind of rallies he's holding, and let's see how many like Trump rallies 2021. Let's look at this up. Yeah, he just had the CPAC speech, but that's a thing. It says that he had nothing new to say. on the Washington Post when they're asking that. But yeah, okay. So he was at an Ohio rally on June 27th, and hints at running again in 2024. But at the same time, there's a crazy percentage of Republicans out there who still think that Donald Trump is going to run again, or is going to be reinstated by the end of August. And a lot of people think that there's going to be hell to pay. And it's been shown that the United States meets every single criteria for a civil war.
I mean, yes. I don't think that's gonna go as well for the insurrectionists as they think, because there was a surprising amount of the military that did vote for Biden, and the military, while there are a substantial, a worrying amount of people who are definitely dissenting in pretty significant ways, like those Atomwaffen members that were found to be within the ranks of the military, and still are, even though they shouldn't be able to, because, you know, we love a Nazi in the military. Didn't fight against them in a world war or anything at all. I feel like a lot of them don't want to actually see their country blow up. You know, the country they've pledged allegiance to and are supposedly serving. Yada yada. Like, we can argue till the cows come home about how much the military actually, like, serves to do whatever for America. Outside of, like, the, you know, fact that they are literally protecting American corporate interests, but that's not individual service members' fault, right? But I feel like people who go into the service do believe in the ideals of America, even if they're on the right. And that's not to say that those people aren't misguided, in my opinion, but they believe in America, and they want America to be good, right? Regardless of whether or not I agree on how to do that. That's what they want. So you would think those people would not want to see their whole country blown up, you know, or destroyed.
Yeah, and when you deal with it's going to be, if they try to start something, the National Guard will shut them down pretty fast. But if we saw civil unrest last year, I just saw a documentary last night on Portland, and what Portland is like after clashes between left and right wing activists. You had a lot of businesses, even a lot of churches vandalized. They have some of the highest populations of homeless in the country right now. Businesses pulled out. There's still plenty of economic damage that could be done. If worst comes to worst, there is still tons of economic damage that could happen. Because that's the last thing we want to see, is for the whole country to resemble Portland right now, because they're trying to rebuild.
Right.
And they're trying to get people's lives back together. And you have tents pitched throughout downtown. If agitators start trying to start, say, deposing Democratic mayors and governors, they could still wind up. They would lose easily. They'd be slaughtered, but they could easily wind up still destroying landmarks and putting a lot of places out of business out there, because corporations are going to say that they don't want to stay within the United States.
Honestly, if corporations want to leave the United States, be my guest.
Well,
that's just my honest opinion about it.
If they do, you'd have hundreds of millions of people losing their jobs.
You know, I'm not saying I don't also want protections for those people in place. I just think corporations do a lot of damage, not just here, but worldwide, really. Because those big corporations are explicitly built on exploitation, not only of their workers here, but exploitation of resources and people the world over. I mean, like, we do not hold companies accountable at all. Nestle literally is allowed to use child slave labor abroad as long as it doesn't happen in the United States. There was a court that ruled that recently. That's bad. Maybe that's just my opinion, but that's bad,
Yeah.
you know?
Think about how many Americans are, even if they're paid shit wages, think about how many people Walmart employs. Think about how many people FedEx employs, even if they can't deliver a package on time.
I mean, I don't think they're actually going to leave. The market here is too big. But if they did, I'm not saying it won't do damage. It will do damage, but I think in the long run, this is extremely long that I'm talking about. We're talking decades. Okay, I'm talking years and years and years. I think it would be better if we didn't have these megacorps here.
Well, you say that, but governments
Isn't the
Vietnam,
whole point of capitalism to have a bunch of small businesses all competing against each other? Isn't that the whole fucking point?
in theory, but Vietnam, which is a communist government, has actually wound up embracing corporations.
Then they're not communist.
Plundering their rainforest. Yeah, they're nominally communist, but they exploit they support corporations exploiting their rainforests and basically destroying nature in their own country.
That's not what communism is, though.
But my point is the fact that
we're nominally democratic, but if you actually look at how democratic our system is, it's really not that democratic.
Yeah, you have Gary. You mean because of judicial review or because of gerrymandering?
It's not. It's a bunch of stuff, not just gerrymandering. It's gerrymandering. It's voter ID. It's fucking not having access to polling places. It's not having voting days be holidays. It's not letting our workers have time off to go and vote on voting days. It's like a billion different things that all stack up to most people do not have the ability to freely just go and vote. Or at least a significant chunk of the populace, which means that we're not actually fucking democratic almost at all. We rate very low on how democratic we are when lined up against other democratic, countries. Extremely low.
I think that election day should be a federal holiday, but
that doesn't matter if, people can't get the time to go out, to get the time off to go out and vote, can't get that paid time off. Yeah, because a lot of people can't give up that paid time at all.
Mm-hmm. And when that happens, you're dealing with the fact that it should be a federal holiday. It just isn't, because a lot of Republicans don't want that, because they don't want as few people voting as possible.
Because if everybody voted, Republicans would no longer win almost anything.
Yeah. Because they are usually among the professional class who are more well-to-do and can afford to take that day off and are more likely to be self-employed.
Yep.
So that's the system's rigged. But when you look at just how the system is totally just, or how these conspiracy theories are spreading, you look at them in where are they spreading? Let's again, it's Mike Lindell, and he's been doing rallies about this. He's been speaking at actual rallies saying that Trump is going to be reinstated. He's the guy who came up with the August date. Trump himself has said outright that he credits Mike Lindell with the August date. That stuff he pulled out his ass. He has no way of verifying that at all. Percentage of, I know I saw a scary percentage of people out there believe it. Republicans. And quite frankly, there's not 30% of registered Republicans believe that Trump will be reinstated.
How?
Because Mike Lindell buys a shit ton of ad time on Fox News and Newsmax.
No, I mean literally how? By what procedure? There is no procedure for him getting reinstated at this point. None. We don't have one.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. Believe me, technically, when you look at other contested elections, you can look at, let's look at 2016. I was going to say, no, I was going to get around to that. 2016. That election was one that Trump largely won because he got the Russian government to create social media bot farms to
I don't even
promote.
know that he necessarily got the Russian government to, but the Russian government did it.
Yeah, they did that with bot farms to promote YouTube channels and Twitter accounts that were supporting Donald Trump. And even before that, Hillary Clinton got the media through connections got her connections in the media to offer more coverage to candidates out there that she thought she could win with, including Donald Trump. In 2016, it should have been an election between Bernie Sanders and either John Kasich or Marco Rubio. One of those three people should have been our president in that year. 2000, Al Gore technically had the ability to. He could have actually won.
There was some sketchy shit going down in Florida.
There were things out there which voters wound up finding themselves having accidentally voted for Pat Buchanan when they meant to vote for Gore.
Yep, because of those butterfly ballots.
27 votes. Yep, by only 27 votes. So that's a thing.
That's the kind of thing that requires a recount, by the way, anybody who's a Trumpian, is if there is less than 500 vote difference, recount that shit, make sure we got it on lock. But if it's more than that, it's not likely to actually be inaccurate enough to change anything.
Yep. And with the 1972 presidential election, Richard Nixon wanted to run against George McGovern because he was a communist sympathizer, and he went out of his way to sabotage the other Democratic candidates. Henry Jackson technically should have won that election. 1960, Kennedy defeated Nixon by getting the dead to vote. And that's not even getting into the most insane electoral malfeasance you can think of. When in 1876, with Rutherford Hayes, and how he became president, that was largely through backroom deals. Nixon resigned, but Nixon resigning did not put Henry Jackson in the White House. None of the others resigned.
Well, and even like on the Democratic side of the 2020, like what the Democratic Party did again to Bernie was ridiculously sketchy. Basically, they just the reason there was so many fucking candidates was because the Democratic Party wanted to water it down as much as possible so that the candidate they actually favored, Biden, would seem like the safest choice. Like, basically, it was between Biden and Bernie for the most part, right? Or that's who the most people seem to like, right? So they got a bunch of candidates that were somewhere in between Biden and Bernie, like more radical than Biden, but less radical than Bernie, so that it would pull more people away from Bernie because there was all this stuff that was represented in the middle. Not to say that we shouldn't have more representation of all along that scale in the first place, but it doesn't really work with how our system works right now. That would be more of a ranked choice sort of system, which would be good, but that's not the system we have, you know?
The problem with the primaries is the fact that the candidate you actually like could have dropped out by the time things get to your state.
Well, and so after they sucked all those radical voters away from Bernie by having medium radical candidates, and then all of them dropped out and were able to pick who they wanted their shit to go to, and they all picked Biden to fuck over Bernie. Specifically, it was literally it was super smart politically for the Democratic Party, don't get me wrong. That was a really great political move, just on its face, but it was really shitty for people who would have preferred that their second choice be Bernie, which once again would work great in a ranked choice system where you could go, if this candidate dropped out, this candidate that I vote for, I want my vote to go to this guy. If that person drops out, I want it to go to this guy, because we're dictating where we want our votes to go instead of the candidates.
Well, here's the thing, is the fact that Biden actually gets along well with Sanders anyway. And most of the Democratic Progressive Caucus.
But he's not where a lot of leftists would like him to be, or anywhere near it. He specifically was I don't want to do Medicare for all, which was at least one of my big issues, and I know a lot of other people who supported Bernie.
M4A, that was something out there that was also supported by, I think, that was also supported by Warren and Harris.
Right. But they sent their
delegates over to
their points to Biden.
Yeah, they send their delegates to Biden.
Because they're part of the Democratic establishment still. Bernie isn't. Bernie is a Democrat, but he's like a Democrat in name. You know?
Yeah, he's registered independent, but he still caucuses with the Democratic Party.
Right.
And that causes a lot of people in the party establishment to dislike him because he won't.
Because they're not actually okay. And this is why I hate it when people automatically assume that every person on the left has to like the Democrats. I don't fucking like the Democrats. I think they're really shitty too. They're just slightly less shitty. And it's very irritating that there really isn't that many people out there in politics who actually represent my interests, who I actually believe is trying to fight for me and people like me. And Bernie is one of those people who I genuinely believe is fighting for the little guy and, you know, the people, period, really. But the Democrats aren't. They aren't. They're just like humanitarian capitalists. You know, they're literally neoliberals. They're still capitalist, which we can argue about, you know, the pros and cons of capitalism some other time. But, like, they're still capitalists. They're still, like, owned by the big corporations and conglomerates. They're still, like, not wanting to give people health care. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are still not wanting to give people health care or actually do anything about homelessness or actually, like, end the drug war or any of the other things that are important to people who are left. Not center left. We don't have a left party. So we go for the next best thing, but it's still shitty, you know?
Well, that's because that's the Democratic Progressive Caucus itself, which is part of the Democratic Party, but
they like
they're smaller
own the Democratic Party.
They're smaller than what's the centrist wing by I think like 2 seats in the House.
And they're smart, like politically. They're very, very tough opponents. Especially if you're trying to run an honest race, because you almost have to run a dishonest race in order to beat them because they're using dishonest tactics.
Yeah, the New Democrat Coalition, that's the centrist wing that's still slightly larger than the Democratic Progressive Caucus. And at the same time, when you're dealing with a state, you're still going to wind up with the neoliberal wing being your best bet in a state like Arizona, in a state like West Virginia. That's where you're going to be in a state like Alabama.
Fucking Manchin.
Yeah.
God damn it!
That's the only way they can win. That's the only way they can win because in presidential races...
Manchin, I will admit, though, has surprised me a couple of times. I just wish that he didn't act like the Republicans were acting in good faith, because they're clearly not. They're very clearly not, but he still, like, acts like they are. And I'm sitting here like, Manchin, listen with me, buddy. I understand you want to work with them, but you can't work with somebody who doesn't want to work with you. You can't do it.
Just specifically said he's done with bipartisanship.
Good! Thank God! Finally!
And he's just like, I'm going to filibuster everything you guys try to do. No matter how good it is for the country. And back during World War II or the Cold War, that would have been unthinkable.
I mean, that's what the Republicans have been doing the whole time. The whole time.
That's what they're doing now.
Like,
back
Democrats...
during World War II and the Cold War, they could not do that because they would be accused of being borderline
treason. By the whole time, I meant, like, the last couple of, like, election cycles.
Yeah. It really started with Gingrich in the 90s, where he just decided to shut down the federal government as a stunt because Clinton wouldn't let him talk to the ambassador, I think it was Israel at the time.
It's just ridiculous because... Let me collect my thoughts really quick so I can word this precisely. It's ridiculous because the Democrats for so long placated Republicans by compromising, over-compromising, really, to be honest. That the Republicans almost got used to it. And now that the Democrats are trying to play a little harder, the Republicans are basically just throwing a fit. They're like, if you don't want to do it our way, we're not going to do it at all. And of course they started really doing that after the big baby himself, Trump, got elected.
That was literally the decadence of Rome. That's what brought their empire down, was hubris.
Like, I can respect somebody on the right who genuinely wants to better the country, even if I disagree with how to do it. Because, and while I don't like this country, I say that because I don't like how it is right now. I can envision a better future for this country, and I genuinely want that. Because I want the country to be better for all people. You know, all men are equal, that kind of stuff. You know, the Constitution or whatever. But it's not, and we need to fix that, but the Republicans are just stonewalling it and acting like nothing's fucking wrong, unless it's, I can't say something anymore, because you'll call me racist! And it's like, then stop saying racist shit.
A lot of the stuff that they get banned for off social media platforms actually really was pretty fucking stupid to say. When you look at like what the last straw was, it's insane. I know that Twitter and YouTube largely had to clean house because of pressure, and I know that D Live started kicking people off their platform as well.
That doesn't surprise me. Okay, as much as I complain about the card companies because of my line of work, and the discrimination that people in my line of work face from the card companies don't like when you allow racist, blatantly racist and violent shit on your site. They don't like it. And if they pull your ability to process payments, you're fucked. So in that case, it does kind of work for the greater good, quote unquote. I'm guessing you're a Trump supporter?
Well, let me see what your chat's like. Let me look up your chat. Okay, I'm looking at my chat, and I'm looking at my connection.
No, sweetie, I am not a Trump supporter.
It says my stream's experiencing issues. Let me quickly just hit end stream and restart.
Okay.
And see if that fixes my issues, because I got viewers earlier, then... Yeah.
I'm a fucking leftist, bro.
I'm actually the centrist
No,
here.
I just don't like the Democrats. Either, because they're also shitty. They're just less shitty. But thank you for tuning in. I appreciate that. It was actually genuinely a good laugh. So I'm not gonna ban you or anything. It was just really funny, because no.
You're kinda hot though.
I know.
I'm seeing people here. Can I ban this person?
No. I am hot. What? He's just cap. Or no cap. Like, he's just spitting facts.
Alright. If you
go to my Twitter to find out more.
Now it's actually working. Now my account is actually working.
Why are they okay with using ID to book a private jet but not to vote? It's not that voter ID as an idea is inherently bad. Okay, it's stuff like hold on.
Which IDs they're banning?
Huh?
Which IDs they do not allow as acceptable
IDs. It's because
and those are ones out there that black voters traditionally use.
Right. I was gonna bring up a specific example. It was in I think it was one of the Carolinas that it happened in, where a couple of years ago it was found out that the people who were making the voter ID laws specifically researched IDs that black people are more likely to use and have, and then banned those without writing that in the, like, that black people use these in the law, so that, you know, they could be hush hush, wink wink, nudge nudge, nod nod, you know, this isn't racist. And then once it was looked into, I think it was the Supreme Court of the, like, federally, or was it the Supreme Court of the state that was like,
Supreme Court federally,
wait a second, you guys did this research and then banned those explicitly. You're, like, pretty explicitly doing this against black people. Now, it's not always that explicit, right? It's not. It's often, like, hidden under significantly more layers, or it's, like, buried further, or people just don't look into it. But that kind of thing happens a lot with voter ID laws. You should, if you want to be in a democratic country, if you want to have a democratic system, you have to allow the most people to vote, and the easiest access to vote. Now, I'm not saying no voter ID necessarily, but if we want to have voter ID laws, those voter IDs should be given to everyone at the age of 18 for free. We should not hide voting, which is one of the most sacred fucking rights in America, supposedly. We should not hide voting behind having to pay for an ID. That's ridiculous. You have to pay to vote. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And at the same time, what we're talking here is, let's get back on topic here and get into some of the things out there that was said about some of the reinstatement conspiracies and exactly how we can talk about possibly stopping them. Like, what kinds of information you can give them besides just, these people are nuts. I am not seeing the media actually try to actively debunk these things and point out that the Republican Party is usually in love with what's effectively pseudo-law. Found what one that you haven't found. Got one of those piercings.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep the off-topic stuff, like, in the chat specifically.
Yeah, I was going to say that kind of stuff that you're seeing with some of with some of that, you're not seeing any fact checkers in there pointing out that other than just saying it's patently absurd. You're not having people explain why it's absurd. You're not explaining how even if a president could be found to have won an election through fraudulent means, there is no process for the loser of the election to wind up taking office, even in situations out there where it has been found to have occurred. That's insane. You're not seeing people actually going ahead and actually trying to debunk these things other than just writing them off. And I think that's largely going to wind up empowering people with absurd beliefs. I know that there's been that you're not seeing a whole lot of conspiracy skeptics actually taking this seriously. I'm not sure. I haven't checked YouTube about it. I've just Googled it. Let's see. Trump reinstate. Am I seeing anything from any like channels that I recognize as left wing? Okay, so it's just stuff from mainstream news sources who Republicans tend to trust less than independent pundits on YouTube. But a lot of it's stuff like from The Hill, MSNBC, CNN, source Forbes. These are sources out there that Trump's base don't trust. They don't trust the mainstream media. They kind of sort of trust Fox News. They trust Breitbart and Newsmax and independent pundits and Twitter accounts. I'm not seeing anybody in here, like, I'm not seeing any left-wing pundits out there are doing the same thing when they would still manage to get more. Buy does not find me a jerk. Buy is taken. Let's put it at that. So that's a thing. That is a thing. And you're not going to see a whole lot. You're not seeing that. I know that somebody like a lot of people have said they managed to get converted away from being Republicans to Democrats because of people like ContraPoints. But again, I'm not seeing any videos on that from any sort of independent sources.
I mean, I've seen a lot of left-wing and leftist YouTubers go through, like, all the, like, election fraud claims and debunk them. I mean, honestly, a lot of that stuff that's still circulating currently does tend to be prolific on specifically the, like, echo chamber sites that are being made, like Trump's new social media and Gab and
Telegram,
Parler and stuff, and it doesn't really seem to reach outside of those circles anymore, especially because a lot of people on the right left wider social media to be on there specifically.
Mm-hmm. It's the fact that they'll get fact checked if they put it on Facebook or Twitter. And they don't want that. They don't want a Twitter fact checker saying, you're wrong. They don't want somebody on Instagram saying, you're wrong. Even if the views are shown to be deliberately false.
And yet they scream about how people on the left don't want to be told that. It's like, no, the points you just bring up are dumb and wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I've looked into this. I have the evidence. I know it's on my side. Like,
yeah. I know that I'm willing to concede certain points if I can be verifiably proven wrong by a credible source. I know that when it comes to things out there, that the books that I started reading, here's an example. Like a lot of times, here's an example of a book that I started reading. The Israeli-Palestinian Conflict by Dov Waxman, who is a professor at Northeastern University. Published by Oxford University Press. That's a credible source to understand that conflict after tensions started rising. Here's an example of a credible history source. The Teutonic Knights, a military history. Usually the more the more bland your title is, and stodgy sounding it is, and the fact that this thing was sold in British pounds because it was likely printed in the UK for their audience, not in the United States, the more likely a source is to be credible. The most lowbrow that I've been reading was another book that I bought on the same topic, which was Noah Tishby's book on the history of Israel, which was promoted heavily by Bill Maher. There you go. And Bill Maher he's crude, but his show is highbrow. You don't see too much highbrow media basically saying insane things. That's a job for the gutter press. Things out there like, I mean, occasionally you'll see some absurd highbrow sources. I think that there are some nutty right-wing highbrow sources. I think Chronicles is an example of a nutty highbrow right-wing source. But they're the minority. When you look at there's not a whole lot of books that are really like staunchly anti-Biden books or pro-Trump books. You look at the title of Donald Trump Jr.'s book. Let's look this up on Amazon and have it ruin my search metrics for the next few weeks. Yeah. Triggered, How the Left Thrives on Hate and Wants to Silence Us. There's a lot of loaded language in that title. There's a lot of loaded language in that title. And that's an example of a source out there that I would not trust.
I'm sorry that you feel so silenced by us saying, hey, maybe don't be fucking racist, dude. So silenced.
Yeah, it's just, again, examples of books out there that are read by Trump supporters, like SJWs Always Lie, Taking Down the Thought Police by Vox Day.
I love that people are still using the term SJW, like the 2016 ass term in fucking 2021.
That book was written in 2015.
Oh god.
The book was written in 2015.
You can tell.
Yeah, but it has a snarl word in the title. He puts a snarl word in the title. A lot of right-wing gutter press stuff really comes from a place that's lowbrow, deliberately trying to be as confrontational as possible, loaded language, snarl words, just being as blatantly stupid and idiotic as humanly possible. Or not stupid. I think that was beneath me and kind of the point I was trying to make. Just stuff out there that a serious academic would not take seriously unless they are trying to describe right-wing words. Yeah, the current term for that is, it was woke schooled for a while.
Woke schooled is probably the more current term for SJW. Or what SJW like should really be making fun of, really.
Well,
because I don't like woke scolds either. You know, I don't like people who like scream at you for like accidentally misgendering them and stuff like that. Like, that's ridiculous. It's like, calm down. I understand that it hurt or like upset you, but like, you can't freak out on people and expect them to treat you better, sort of a thing. But
well, here's the
that
thing,
is not to say that being transphobic or homophobic or racist or whatever is like not wrong. It still is wrong.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Heath won. That is not even remotely true.
All right, Heath. I wasn't gonna ban you because you were kind of just being like generally a piece of shit and not specifically. But I don't tolerate that shit. Goodbye. Goodbye. I'm a trans man. Fuck you.
I knew we were gonna get people like that. And what I was going to say is that the people who out there who are originally called social justice warriors were radical black separatists, aka Hoteps, who are now...
No, he was being transphobic, so I banned him.
They're now associated with the political right, and TERFs, who, the TERFs are still associated with the political left in the UK, but they're associated with the political right in the United States.
You might have seen that I did allow him to spout off like that whole time. I don't have a problem with people disagreeing with me, but when you start literally denying science, I'm gonna yeet you.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Science doesn't say men are always men and women are always women.
History doesn't say that.
That's not what science says.
The Roman Empire had a transgender emperor. We had a transgender founding father in this country, who we have a holiday named after in my state.
There were transgender Vikings that we've seen buried, like, with male skeletons, but were buried as traditional females. Like, trans people have existed forever. Not only socially, but like, science doesn't say that trans people aren't valid. It doesn't. Once you look past high school biology and actually study how that stuff is a lot more nuanced than you expect, than you learn in high school biology, it's not denying science to say trans people are the gender they identify as. Like, that's just not what the science says.
Yeah, it's again, if you
exactly, Sodomi.
If you look up who some of these people were, like, you look up the French author George Sand, George Sand was a pen name, but if you look at what Sand was like in real life, it's pretty clear that you're talking about a guy, or at least somebody out there who was truly gender non-conforming in a lot of ways. As in cross-dressing, dirty jokes, behaving like a guy. Casimir Pulaski, who is the transgender founding father I mentioned, was born with an intersex condition, caused him to develop facial hair, was raised as a boy, despite being born female, raised as a boy, and grew facial hair, grew a male muscle tone because of that intersex condition, and wound up saving George Washington's life, and we would not have founded this country without him.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a thing. They didn't have hormone therapy back then, no, but they did have. They lived
socially as the opposite sex, and they nobody fucking bothered them a lot of times because it just didn't matter, because it doesn't matter.
Alexander the Great specifically took a transgender lover. The Bible
Fun fact, there's some evidence that Alexander the Great might have been a woman.
Yeah, the Bible specifically mentions the term eunuch as a term for people out there who did not identify with their gender, whether or not they chose to emasculate themselves. That is a thing.
We should probably get back on topic, though.
Yeah, back on topic to the Trump reinstatement series. And I have lost most of the links I sent because I have like Discord up here with both two cans. But yeah, that's the point that I was making is the fact that you're dealing with I know one of them actually threatened a CNN reporter saying that they're going to start a civil war.
Hey, if you're gonna start a civil war, don't talk about it on the internet.
Don't talk about it to reporters.
Don't do that. You're spoiling the surprise.
Yeah. Don't talk. It's like one of those. Tells the press. If Trump doesn't get reinstated, we're gonna revolt. Yeah.
He probably even went like, "That's off the record." Like that matters.
It's one of those things out there where the NSA are clearly monitoring things like Gab in Parler to check for people saying incredibly stupid things to see who's just being a dumb fuck and who is actually a genuine terrorist.
Right.
That we should put
It's
on
also
the
like
list.
it's also really funny because like
from buying a gun.
There are the people who like specifically like did the insurrection, right? And then who later tried to get on a flight and realized they were put on the no-fly list. Like, yeah, that's what we do to terrorists now because of your party.
Yeah.
Did you know participating in insurrection of the U.S. government is considered terrorist activity?
Yep.
Who fucking... Wow, much... Mind blown. Jesus Christ.
And most of the country wants to see more inquiries into what happened on January 6th to understand the intelligence failures. Those were things out there that happened. I'm not gonna say nothing. It's one of those, but most of the country wants to see what happened there.
How did this happen?
And the Republicans are blocking it.
Because Republicans helped them.
Yeah, that's why they're blocking it, because they don't want to say that...
right, they're all like, it was Antifa, actually, but let's not look into it.
Yeah.
Let's not look into it.
They don't want to say that Lauren Boebert took a good chunk of the future rioters with them on a tour of the Capitol. They don't want to say that she may have heard something from them and didn't report it. That would have been bad.
Let's not look into how Holly was like literally like high-fiving and like giving autographs to people who then went on to do the insurrection.
Yeah.
No, let's not.
Holly could still say that that he didn't know they were going to do that.
Sure.
But
sure. Some of them were literally wearing shirts that said like insurrection on today or whatever.
And they built a gallows for Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, that one might be okay.
Yeah, it's like they built a gallows for that.
That's a joke for legality's sake. That's a joke.
They built a gallows there, and they're like, oh, we want to execute the people out there who are putting Biden in as president.
But what if we just guillotine the senators?
Yeah. They were just like, why don't we just go French Revolution on these guys? You know, we've built the scaffolding.
Actually,
it was there. I saw it on C-SPAN as it happened. I saw fires lit on the steps of the Capitol building.
Yeah, shortly after...
I saw windows broken.
Mm-hmm. Shortly after that whole thing like went down, I actually saw like a really funny TikTok where it was this guy who's a leftist, like radical leftist. Like genuinely actually radically left, right? Okay. And he was like, it was like a little skip, so it was like him and another character, right? His other character was like, there's an insurrection! And he goes, fuck yeah! And like puts on his like patch jean jacket, like it's like with the sleeves torn off, and he's got his little baseball bat and whatever. And the guy's like, no! It was the other guys, it wasn't the anarchists, it was the people on the right. And the guy just goes, and like puts his bat down. It's like, fuck!
Yeah,
the wrong guys!
Yeah, usually I'm not particularly a fan of revolution against a democracy because I know right off the bat that what you wind up with is not going to be anywhere near as good.
Usually.
I don't think that there's ever been a successful revolution against a democracy. I mean, Napoleon stopped the reign of terror.
Wasn't there one recently that then we had to fix? Because Egypt? America loves fixing the global South so that they're not communist anymore.
You mean Egypt?
No. It was like in South America, like Bolivia or whatever.
That was a thing. I thought there was some sort of constitution crisis that I think I heard about. That
there was somebody who was a socialist who was like democratically elected, and then we went, nope, that's not allowed because he's a socialist.
Well, and he was actually president for a long time, and he actually did ease things up with the United States. You had the other party wound up declaring victory preemptively and exiled him over to Mexico. And then it turns out that, Evo Morales is actually the winner. He's coming back to Bolivia and he's still your president.
Right. The point is there was something going on there or something.
I'm not entirely sure if there was U.S. government involvement or not. But
I mean, there wasn't. Definitely not. There wasn't no CIA involvement in that. Absolutely not. No way.
Well, he did cozy up to Venezuela, so it's possible. That's not even getting into...
Not the point.
That's not the point. But the point is that I don't think that did not work out well. And quite frankly, democracy was restored at the end. I think the only time that a democratically elected government has been overthrown and wound up actually turning out for the better was just under the first Napoleon Bonaparte. And then of course, Europe decided that the European powers were all like, he's not a legitimate king. He's Italian.
By the way, did you know he wasn't actually short?
He was just short by French standards.
No, not even. He was average height. He was average, or even like a little tall. But people started saying that he was short so frequently, and he would get mad at it, so people would keep doing it. So now everybody just thinks he's fucking short, or he was fucking short.
Yeah, that's what they did, is because the other European powers didn't want to accept Napoleon. They refused to accept that he was Emperor of France because they're like, he did not necessarily come from a truly noble family. Italy was divided in between a number of different kingdoms, duchies, and the Papal States, and some republics. And they're like, he's not of true noble blood. He can't be your emperor. We're going to try to goad him into wars that they eventually lost until he tried to fight Britain and Russia at the same time. But yeah, that was probably the only time that it worked out. I kind of don't like the idea of overthrowing a democracy because,
look,
it's never worked.
I'm not saying we should do it as leftists, but I wouldn't be mad if we did as leftists. Exactly. But I'm also 100% certain that if leftists did try to pull some shit like that and it went awry, they wouldn't cry as much about the actual consequences of their actions. Like the people who had meltdowns in airports because they got put on the no-fly list because they, performed an act of terrorism.
Yeah, if there were, I would honestly say outright that I consider myself a patriot. I do not believe in overthrowing the government at any point. Did Ashley Babbitt deserve it? Yes, I do read chat. I'm just reading Vi's because Vi's the one out there with the active chat.
Sometimes.
And I am just going to ban you. Does Ashley Babbitt deserve it? Yes, 100%. I think outright the police have the right to use force. If they are 100% going to be, if that person is an active threat towards another human being, if they're attacking an officer or attacking a non-combatant, absolutely, police should be allowed to use force in that situation. Ashley Babbitt absolutely was trying to come into Congress.
Yeah, she wasn't standing there doing nothing. She was actively trying to climb through a window, which everybody had been told to stay the fuck away from. Now, I'm not for police violence, generally speaking. I'm not. I'm just not. Yeah. I don't think most of the time it is okay or justified. But it is what you kind of have to, you have to be aware of how interactions with the police will go, because that's how our system works. The police shoot people and kill people all the fucking time, and you have to be aware that that's a possibility if you're going to actively do something that's...
an officer and is part of an angry riot and trying to overthrow the government.
What do you expect when you're part of a riot, honestly?
Yeah. If you are deliberately insulting an officer, then yes, they have the right to use force. Actually, I have it 100% had it coming. She was a terrorist. I have zero sympathy for her. I think that I have some sympathy for her family, but
like I don't necessarily think she deserved it. I just don't know what else you could have expected in that situation.
I don't think that there was another situation. They had an armed standoff outside the floor of the house.
Right.
They were pretty much put in a situation where the police absolutely had to be armed, had to use force, had to expect people to be who were breaching the Capitol walls to be armed themselves.
I think that this is probably one of the more justified police violence incidents I have heard about.
Yeah.
I just, generally speaking, don't like police violence in general.
Yeah. If someone out there has their back turned and is running from the police, no, they should not shoot. They should absolutely de-escalate.
Yeah.
If someone out there has hostages, but is willing to negotiate, you de-escalate. If someone is actually actively attacking another human being, that's a different situation.
I still think that most of the time they should probably not shoot to kill.
But if someone else is shooting to kill, then yes. You should aim for center mass because that's where you're most likely to get a hit.
Like, there was that there was that knife fight between those two teenage black girls a while ago, where
one of them had a knife.
One of them had a knife, right? And she got shot, and I think she died. And the cop was definitely close enough where he could have shot her in the leg, which would have done the same fucking thing.
But police are trained to aim for center mass. That's what they are trained for in
firearms. I'm saying that's not good.
I'm agreeing with you that it's not good, but that is exactly what they were supposed to do.
Right. It's what you have to expect versus what it should be.
Yeah, he was still following protocol, following his training. That is, you can't assault another human being in the United States and not expect a consequence. Not expect to get killed yourself. You have to trust that if you're going to get into a fight with somebody, there's a Second Amendment in this country. You have to expect that the other person is going to be armed. You can't just go around picking fights with people and expect to walk away with your life.
I wish it didn't have to be like that, though.
But that's the way it is. If you ban the Second Amendment, you'll just have
no. I'm not saying we ban the Second Amendment. I'm not saying we ban guns. I think
that should be a long-term goal of banning firearms, but I think that if you just went up and did it overnight, you'd have a crazy illegal market. You'd have all the same problems with prohibition.
I mean, that's kind of how drugs work right now.
Yep. You can't just ban them overnight. That's stupid. I think you have to have a fundamental change of the culture away from people not wanting to own firearms.
Well, and I think there's a lot we could do even without banning firearms, like literally just promoting a different attitude about our guns in general. Yeah. About how they're not like fun toys, because they're not. They're weapons, and you should you should basically have it almost martial arts drilled into your head, in my opinion, that this is not a toy, this is not something to play with, this is a lethal fucking weapon, and you have to be careful and responsible with it. That's how we do it in martial arts. When we teach people how to fight and self-defend. I don't see why we don't do it with guns.
Yeah, if you pull out I think outright that, here's the thing. If you're an average citizen, you should absolutely be trying to de-escalate conversations, not pick fights with people, and not put yourself in dangerous situations. That's what I do, and that's what I think most people should do. So that's my opinion on Ashley Babbitt. It's 100%. It was 100% had it coming, and did everything she possibly could to get shot by police. I'm going to state outright that I think that it's crazy that people have tried to turn her into a martyr. When I don't believe that that's necessarily I think that outright that the whole dead white woman thing, it's what's called missing white woman syndrome, of treating that as some sort of automatically makes something a noble cause. I don't believe that. I think outright that a lot of Trump people out there who are still diehard loyalists, they are completely deluding themselves, and they are absolutely completely defending the types of values out there that I find beyond the pale. I think that there's not really any case for a revolution. I think that we're starting a big infrastructure to deal with things like poverty and homelessness and trying to create jobs for the public sector. I think we're starting to get on the right track. I think we're going to start trying to expand Obamacare coverage. I think that outright that the issues out there that this country is having that could put it towards a revolution are being dealt with by the Biden administration. And
110%, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. I have a question for this panel, Dark Sage. And yes, triggered my butt spot. Yes. You know what a butt spot is by, right?
No.
It is a bot you can put in your Twitch chat that replaces a word of your choice. The default is butt. And make it say something else. I changed mine to booty nipples.
What was the question?
Dark Sage is asking a question, which is what?
What?
Somebody said I have a question for this panel, and I have no idea what that question is.
What is the question?
Yeah, the Trump loyalists there, what they're trying to do is they're basically saying they want to try to overthrow the government around a year after the election already occurred, which is insane. That's not going to happen.
You guys already failed once, like Christ.
It's the fact that
how many L's you guys want to take? Seriously.
Yeah, it's when people like Republicans out there complain about Kavanaugh and Gorsuch all the time, when a lot of what the Republican Party tries to do, and Roberts for that matter, they complain about the three of them all the time, but what the Republican Party wants to do completely goes against. They're so tied up in judicial originalism that they cannot comprehend case law.
Well, like, and also it's my understanding that those judges, like, actually have ideals that they stick to, even if it doesn't go with the party line. But because the Republicans are so very much, if you don't go with the party line, you're dead to us, that's why they get so mad. Because they're like, you have a Republican, you're supposed to be a Republican, so you're supposed to agree with us no matter what. And it's like, no, I actually have, like, values and morals that I stick to.
Oh, believe me, there was a huge social media roasting over Dan Crenshaw for his comments on the Capitol riot, and Liz Cheney got kicked out of her position of leadership in the House by her own colleagues. So they 100% do that, and on the Supreme Court, only Thomas and Alito are really, truly consistently
people talk about, like, left purity testing, and I'm not saying that there aren't leftists specifically who do purity test. They're dumb, but they do it. But it's not the entire Democratic Party. Okay, we should actually hot take. The Democratic Party should probably purity test just a little bit, just a little bit. That's neither here nor there though. But like the Republican Party, super hardcore does it right now. Really hard. They're like, if you don't believe that Trump won, you're out. If you don't believe this, that, and the other, you're out. Like, over stupid shit, too. It's like, why? Feel free to keep whittling yourself down, I guess. Feel free to keep doing that.
I completely expect them to implode within the next 2 to 3 elections.
God, let's hope.
They're going to implode because they're constantly moving further and further to the right and alienating people to the point where I doubt that they can wind up replicating the success that they had with Black and Hispanic voters in 2020. That's simply not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to continue to they're going to slip in with those demographics.
Mm-hmm.
Because they largely don't know how to talk to those demographics when they don't have incumbency on their side. You're going to wind up with another 4 years of either Biden or Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm still mourning the promise of a Bernie presidency.
Well, if Harris runs, I think she's likely to take AOC as her running mate, just because it would get more people onto her side and it would ensure that AOC would not be fighting her in Congress.
I'm not saying
the
that
squad to vote
people.
along with what she wants to do.
I'm not saying people are incapable of change. But Kamala was like one of the
Kamala.
most. I'm sorry, I can't say that in Midwestern.
I'm Midwestern. I say rough instead of rude.
Harris was one of the hardest people on marijuana when she was a prosecutor, and was very proud of how many people she put in jail. And that rubs me the wrong motherfucking way in a lot of ways. So I'm definitely still keeping an eye on her. But I don't trust her with shit still right now, honestly.
Her voting record in the Senate was about as far to the left as Sanders was. She was to the left of Warren.
There's just something about being proud of jailing a fuck ton of people, though, that, like, kind of reveals an underlying, like, nastiness, you know? Like,
I think that
I'm proud that I locked people in cages.
Well, at the same time,
I mean, I'd say that, but, like, that's because it's a sexual proclivity for me, not a like stripping people of their human rights thing.
Well, here's the thing. With Harris, that still tells us she's like going to be tough enough to fight Russia and China, and to keep them contained and prevent them from influencing politics around the world.
I understand that foreign politics is important. I get it. I just don't personally care. I hear they're tough on these foreign enemies we have, and I go, okay, what are you gonna do for the people here? That's what I'm a little more worried about, personally.
I'm actually a hardcore geopolitics junkie, and I've been that way since middle school.
Oh no, I'm aware you're a lot more into, like, the foreign stuff. I just want, like, healthcare, please. Healthcare, please.
Yeah. Healthcare is one of those things out there that if we
can we end the drug war? That would be cool. Can we fucking house the homeless? Can we feed the hungry? That would be nice.
Isn't weed legal in most states?
It's prescription legal in like 37 states and recreational legal in 18.
That's about where same-sex marriage was when at the time the Supreme Court legalized it. It's like that again. Like, you just have to flip. If Thomas or Alito starts retiring and they're both really old,
can we reorganize labor, please? Yes! General strike in October, baby!
Okay,
there's a general strike in October, baby!
They were going to have a general strike in September 2019. I didn't see that actually happen.
Yeah, but if it does actually happen, it will fucking disrupt everything, which is great.
There's a question for me. Ask the question. I have, from Dark Sage, I have been an outspoken critic of President Biden, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump for the past 5 years. I've been the people in offered valid points as why it's like each of them for the past few years have been relentlessly attacked by supporters of all three.
Yo, can you actually say that as at a speed that I can hear?
All right. I have been an outspoken critic of President Biden, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump for the past 5 years. I have been respectful people and offered valid points as to why I dislike each of them. And for the past 5 years, I have been relentlessly attacked by supporters of all three. When we talk about unity today, I'm curious how people would reach out to someone like me who was never given a chance. For the record, I never once attacked their supporters. Never told them to back off or support that.
I don't like any of those fucking people either.
I brought up valid points as to why I dislike them. Okay.
It was Biden, Hillary, and Trump, right? I don't like any of them.
I actually think that Biden is doing a pretty decent job. He's the best.
He's doing okay, but I don't like him. I don't think I've already kind of like said, like, I don't like that he's specifically like, there's absolutely no way I'm doing Medicare for all whatsoever. I don't like that. I think we desperately need it in this country, and I'm not just saying that because I have chronic health issues that I literally can't go get seen for. Like, it's just better if we're healthy as a nation. And I very much don't like Trump, obviously, and I have a lot of issues with Hillary Clinton, more than I do Biden, in fact.
Yeah, I have way more issues with Clinton than Biden. I kind of just held my tongue and voted for Clinton.
Anybody who's going to attack you over criticizing a politician specifically is probably not ready to actually have a conversation about politics. Like, if they're defending them like it's their favorite sports team, run. They're just not going to have a productive conversation.
Yeah, I'm critical of people out there who I otherwise support all the time.
Like talking about like policies and like stuff we want to see get done and how we would do it and how that affects people. And I am perfectly willing to talk it out with people, even people who vehemently disagree with me, as long as they're not like going completely off the wall, like into turf land or anti-science shit, like anti-vax stuff. Like there's a certain point where it's just not worth talking to them anymore. But most people and most people, or at least a lot, there's a really loud section of the internet that just won't fucking talk about anything if you disagree with you. Period, paragraph. This goes for right, this goes for left, this goes for up, this goes for down, okay? Like, there's a very loud minority of, like, basically every political group that are just gonna fucking flame you, no matter what. But if you actually go out and, like, research the like, policies and stuff that you like, you will often find people talking about those policies that are willing to have a discussion. And I feel like people who are more policy folks rather than specific politician focused tend to be able to have more reasonable conversations. Now, once again, that's not to say that you're going to agree in the end or anything, but you having the discussion in the first place is like the first step to being able to convince or be convinced by something, right?
Right. And when you deal with the whole people out there who still believe that Trump won, these are people out there who don't seem to understand what kinds of ridiculous things Trump pulled in an election year. You just like Biden because of Iraq. That's a very fair criticism of Biden, and I think outright that he either deliberately knew that the intelligence was false or did not manage to fact check his sources when he got the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to go to war in Iraq. That's an absolutely fair criticism of Biden. Had family who died over there because he voted yes.
Right, and you'll find a lot of Democrats are willing to criticize Biden. The people who are stands of politicians are not living in the same reality as you are. They're just not. People who stand politicians are literally, I don't understand. They're not a pop star, guys. There are public servants, and we should be able to criticize them, no matter who they are.
When Hillary said that Trump supporters were deplorable, you called her out on it. The whole 50% were in a basket of deplorables. I think that there were people out there who voted for Trump because of party loyalty. I think there are people out there who voted for Trump because they bought into some of his false populism. And I think that there are people out there who may have just liked his, like, over-the-top
I don't necessarily think that criticizing Hillary over that comment is 100% like legit. Yeah, because whenever you're using a generalization, when you're using a generalization, you're gonna catch people in that group that it's not actually true about, no matter what generalization it is. But I do feel like people who legitimately supported Trump because he was Trump and because of what he was saying, that kind of does reveal a certain, like, set of values and beliefs that presumably they try to live by that aren't good.
Why has my Nightbot not managed to ban this fool? There is a bot that just showed up in here that's posting links. And dislike Trump because of the speech on Charlottesville. What, you mean the one out there where you said that Klansmen were very fine people? Yes. I think who are there to defend the legacy of the Confederacy. When there was not really a good historical case for the Confederacy unless you actually think that slavery was good.
Right.
Yeah, that's absolutely something that
Which is not to say that there aren't people who have been brainwashed by the literal propaganda of the Confederacy to believe that it was about something else. Because that is something that has happened. Like, the people, like, the Daughters, I think we talked about this a little bit last Political Talk. The Daughters of the Confederacy literally put out propaganda to make the Confederacy seem more palatable and seem more, like, you can kind of understand where they were coming from or whatever. And it worked because it started being taught in schools, because politicians started pushing this idea. But if you actually look at the historical documents and what people were saying at the time of the Confederacy, who were in the Confederacy, who were leaders of the Confederacy, it just doesn't line up with the propaganda that's out there today about the Confederacy. Look at the actual history. Like, literally just look at the actual history. And all will be revealed. They were pretty fucking blatantly like, yes, this is about our right to own slaves. Yes, this is because we want to keep our slaves. And I'm not saying that the Union was all sunshine and rainbows, or that they had, like, some ultimate altruistic thing, because they weren't actually going to war with the Confederacy in the first place to, like, ban slavery necessarily. But they did eventually. Once again, it's a little bit more nuanced and more complicated than we're taught in schools, because we're not taught any of the nuance in schools. We're taught good guy and bad guy, and not always correctly at that. I'm not letting the Union off the hook either. The Union did not start, like, going to war with the Confederates specifically to free slaves. They didn't. That wasn't the original point of the Union going to war with the Confederacy. It was just to keep the Union together. It just ended up there, which, I mean, they got around to it, sort of. Right?
Lincoln did not want Kansas to be a slave state, though.
Kansas?
He ran as president as part of the Republican Party ticket, which was an anti-slavery party that said out there that they would not permit Kansas to the Union as a slave state and would only have permitted Kansas to the Union as a free state.
Right. There was a lot of those disagreements that led to the Civil War.
And that's what got the South to secede, was if you manage to take a state that's south of the Mason-Dixon line and declare it a free state, we're going to secede. So yeah, I know when the people out there who were there to march for that cause were carrying around Nazi and Confederate flags and chanting out anti-Semitic and homophobic slogans, yes, I think that I cannot call them very fine people, and Trump was largely basically defending them because they voted for him. And that was, I think, ridiculously self-serving and morally reprehensible.
But the point of that was, like, I do believe that not all people who, like, have the stars and bars and do that whole, like, Southern heritage thing, I don't think all of them legitimately would, like, are, like, racist or whatever. I just think they bought into propaganda and haven't actually bothered looking into the real history. And that sucks that they were brainwashed like that, and it is brainwashing. But I mean, if they want to be informed, it's right there for you to look at. We don't hide it. We just don't show it to children for some reason.
Yeah, it's the actual Constitution of the Confederacy, which specifically states that where they reject the ideal of racial equality and they want to have slavery.
And if that's not enough, there's leaders within the Confederacy who were, like, very explicit about wanting to keep slaves, and that's what it was about. There's several different, like, Confederate state constitutions that were written like that too. Like, just look at it. If you want to know, look at it. If you want to be correct and be able to say with confidence that I know what the truth is, look into it. Google's right there, you know?
Yeah, I think that people should be critical of all authority, and that's what it means to be a citizen. And that, yeah, you should be allowed to criticize whoever the hell you want.
Yes.
I criticize a lot of people. I'm willing to criticize people out there who are largely on my own side. I was willing to criticize my own representative for...
I really don't think it should be a hot take to say don't stand politicians.
Yeah. I was willing to criticize my own representative and call out President Biden for not appointing an ambassador to Israel and allowing that conflict to spiral out of control. I specifically stated outright that I believe that we should restart the peace plan because Israel does not have the same level of international popular support that they had back in 2000. And that the sooner the conflict ends, the better. That is 100% a legitimate critique of Joe Biden. I'm willing to critique Joe Biden for letting Russia spearhead the peace talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan, when that puts both of those countries under the Russian sphere of influence, and that could lead us into a war in another 5 to 10 years. Those are legitimate things out there that I can critique Joe Biden for. But the claims that he stole the election, that's
just
ridiculous.
False. It's just false.
Yeah, it's false, because there are reasons why people out there would switch their vote from Trump to Biden. because of dumb things that Trump did that were mistakes that were his own damn fault.
Trump didn't even win the
during an
popular
election
vote in 2016.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that the popular vote is important in our current system. That's a whole nother conversation. But like, it doesn't make it just boggles my fucking brain bits that people are like, there's no way that Trump could have lost. Like, he lost before too. He just won in the right way, the sneaky way that you have to win, and Biden was just won and like played it a little more strategically, you know.
It's the fact that if you don't want to understand change their vote from Trump to Biden, you have to look at his COVID response, his response to the George Floyd protests, and his reaction to Iran early on in 2020.
Right, like there were lots of people who voted either like, okay, so time to fess up. In 2016, I specifically wrote in Bernie Sanders because I didn't fucking like Hillary Clinton at all, and I wasn't gonna vote for fucking Trump. So I wrote in Bernie. I specifically, though, in the 2020 election, voted for Biden because A, I saw the damage that Trump was doing and did do and would do if he continued to be in that position of power, and that's not good. And two, I realized just how fucking over the course of his presidency, I realized just how fucking serious he was about the stuff that he talked about. And I saw what it turned his supporters into and how it mobilized them and how it kind of like just like stoked the flames of whatever hatred lied there. And that was terrifying. I did not want him in a position of power anymore. So I swallowed my pride. I voted Biden, even though I didn't really like Biden all that much, because he was the better choice for America, in my opinion. Yeah, according to my values.
Yeah, Trump personally helped my family in a really personal way, but he kept doing insane things to the point where I just could not vote for him. When he told people to inject bleach, I'm like, yeah, fuck this, I'm voting for Biden. So that's the thing. That is the thing out there which happened. And I ultimately wound up choosing people. I choose policies more than personalities. I look at their platforms and what they actually say they want to do. Biden said he wanted to, even if he wouldn't give people Medicare for all, he still says he wants to expand Obamacare to give people universal coverage. Go for it. If he wants to basically do the infrastructure bill that's currently going through the Senate, I'm all for it. Like it's the fact that the Republicans plan on filibustering everything, and Manchin, he's saying that he wants to keep the filibuster because if the Democrats lose the Senate in the midterms, then they're screwed and the Republicans can do whatever the hell they want, which is a pretty valid point. But at the same time, I think that the Republicans really need to stop basically throwing the entire country under the bus.
Yeah.
For the sake of their own gain.
And like, I might be a little more understanding if any of the policies they were forwarding to fix problems, because they
had no platform in 2020.
Well, hold on, because like, so I feel like the left and the right don't always disagree on what the problems are, right? We both admit that homelessness is a problem. We both think that people who are starving are a problem. We both think that, like, yada yada, right? We don't disagree on the problems. However, the side with solutions that are backed by evidence, that are shown to work and shown to improve things, tend to be the Democrats. And
well, here's the thing. It's
just because they don't like those methods, even though they work, that they won't do it.
Well, the Republican Party also leans so far to the right that what's considered a right-wing party in other countries is something out there that's promoted by the centrist wing of the Democratic Party.
Right.
Things like basic income is considered a radical left position in the United States. Like
radical left policies in other countries is like kill all landlords. Radical left policy here is let's actually take care of our citizens by giving them health care.
Yeah, it's the whole basic income is something out there that's promoted by By a coalition of a center-right and far-right party in Finland. That shows exactly how far to the right the GOP is, and how much they buy really into a hyper-capitalist worldview that I think that even a lot of when you say Chile Brazilian basic income is radical anymore, it's radical in the sense that it's new. Well, it's new in terms of implementation. It's been tried in places like Alaska, but it hasn't. But it's new to be tried on a countrywide level anywhere.
I have things to say about universal basic income, but it's not on topic.
Yeah, the point that I'm making is the fact that is that I think that when it comes into like disinformation, is the back of this is largely about disinformation. I don't mind getting off topic, but what we're talking about here is disinformation about Trump reinstatement, and how there is absolutely no other side to that is backed by any sort of evidence or any sort of historical precedent. When you're looking at this, it's the fact that what is Mike Lindell's net worth? What's his net worth? He's worth $310 million. And yeah, 310 million. So he's got money to toss around to try to get Trump reinstated. And that's never going. Let me put my keys away. It looks weird. He's trying to get Trump reinstated, and it's never going to work, but he has the ability to mislead a whole lot of people with propaganda by funding causes that simply aren't a thing. And so far, the only person in here was basically being deliberately who had any sort of counter argument was somebody out there who decided to be deliberately transphobic. In your chat, them tried to post transphobic statements in my chat before trying to defend Ashley Babbitt. I can't hear you. Is my
Shit, no, sorry, I've been muting when I've been typing. So, I said we literally did put ourselves in the politics category. What did we expect on fucking Twitch?
Yeah, it's like that's the counter argument.
Especially with Destiny doing his whole anti-lefty arc right now, where he's being transphobic and shit.
He's actually being transphobic now?
Yes.
Oh god, yes. I thought he got that out of his system when he defended Kyle Rittenhouse and lost partnership.
No, he's actively like, okay, admittedly, I can see why people might not have a problem with this, but like there's this trans girl who is not the DR girl from Twitch staff, right? But there's this trans girl who identifies as a deer on Twitter or whatever that's been beefing with him, and he like is making fun of that by like quote retweeting someone else who's like, well, if she identifies as a deer, it's hunting season or whatever.
Okay, that's about otherkin.
Well, no, because if you actually like look into her tweets and you actually like look at the context of why she did that,
is that the person Safety and Advisory Council?
No, I already said it's not on Twitch staff. It's not the same deer girl. Okay. Anyway, that's a kink thing. That's a kink thing, okay? This is a different person. So, this person that he's been beefing with, I think the way it was explained, and mind you, I could be wrong. I didn't look super deeply into it, but I just did like a little bit of digging. If I remember correctly, the reason that she started doing that was because when she first came out as a trans woman, it was not really an acceptable thing to be. And she was not allowed to use the pronouns that she wanted to, so, like, she uses, like, it pronouns, and she identifies as a deer, because, like, why the fuck not? And even if it was 100%, no, I'm not a trans woman, I'm literally just a deer, what does that matter? It doesn't affect your fucking life. Let people be deers if they want to fucking be deers. Shut the fuck up, Destiny.
Yeah, but I kind of understand that argument, but at the same time...
What doesn't hurt? It doesn't hurt you.
Otherkin are just turbo furries.
Then just let them be turbo furries. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't matter. Like...
Yeah, I don't have a problem with somebody being a furry.
He's also doing other stuff too with that, like just the agreeing with somebody saying basically we should kill this bitch because she thinks she's a deer. Oof. How about we don't do that? That would be great. And then of course he's like, now he's like, I'm on a, now he's like, now he says that he is, it doesn't matter, like that's not acceptable, especially on Twitter where you can't use tone or anything. You just look like you're supporting somebody threatening somebody else. That's not great. Anyway, he also says that he's a he/him non-binary, which fine, whatever. I don't think you're being sincere, but sure. It's not really my place to say whether or not you're being sincere, technically. But then he's using that to say, well, I can't be transphobic because I'm non-binary. And it's like, dude, trans and non-binary people can be transphobic. Just like gay people can be homophobic. Just like, you know, people of color can be fucking racist. They're like, Jesse Lee Peterson exists. And he's like the most anti-black black man I have ever come across.
Worse than Candace Owens?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Do you not know who Jesse Lee Peterson is? Really?
I know who Candace Owens is, and I wish I didn't.
Jesse Lee Peterson is this old black man who's a pastor. Who, he's so fucking racist against black people. It's ridiculous. Amazing. Exactly. He's... I don't even know where to start. Just, like, look at literally any of his videos, honestly.
Will I lose brain cells?
Yes! Absolutely!
Okay, I'm looking him up on Wikipedia. Said that South Africa was better under apartheid.
He's so bad!
Women who have sex out of wedlock are sluts, and that men who have sex out of wedlock are slut makers. It says that he's against Muslims serving in government, and I'm just like, that's not even in the controversies.
If you want a really good example of
referred to Andrew Yang as a communist.
He is. He's so fucking bad. I would highly recommend looking up his interview with Vosh. It was hilarious. Vosh went in there knowing that he was just going to be memeing on Jesse Lee Peterson, to be fair. But it's hilarious. Also, some of the debates he's had with lefties is really, really funny. He literally is explicitly anti-black, though. Like, he like was like, slaves were happy under their masters and shit like that. Like,
okay, that's worse than Candace Owens.
Bad. Like, really bad. Like, really, really bad.
Well, yeah, okay, so this is somebody out there that I lose brain cells by watching. I saw the Vosh.
But he's really funny to watch, admittedly. And he goes beta! And amazing.
Yeah.
He's like, beta male! Beta male!
I saw the Vosh versus Ethan Ralph debate on Drunken Cousins. That got...
I'm a big Vosh fan, so I'm...
Yeah, I'm a big Ethan Ralph hater. So
as one should be.
I just saw that a lot of the times it was just like all that he could do is just make homophobic comments towards Vosh.
Yeah.
The entire time and treated those as arguments.
Or like, you're a pedo. Oh yeah? Are you gonna use that clip that's been clipped out of context that I've explained a billion times to prove that? Where I wasn't saying child pornography was good anyway, I was saying it was bad. I don't know if you know that incident. Like, basically what happened was, during a discussion he was having with somebody, he compared the exploitation of child slave labor in making clothes to the exploitation of child sex labor in making child porn, to, like, equate them as both being really bad and we shouldn't fucking do them because they're both exploitation of a child. But clipped a certain way, it kind of sounds like he's...
Yeah, that's why I turned VODs on for this stream, but not clips. So VODs are on, but not clips. Like,
But, yeah, so people like to use that to be like, Vosh is a pedophile, and it's like, you know he was saying that was bad, right?
Yeah, I stopped watching Destiny after the Rittenhouse comments.
I started stopping watching him after that. I still watch some of his debates with right wingers or like people who are defending right wing policies and talking points. Sometimes, rarely, but like I can't look at his Twitter anymore. He is just literally losing his fucking mind right now on the omniliberal or whatever. Which
Omnidestiny?
no, it's the omniliberal. Liberal.
He got again.
Yeah. Which is also the like his political movement that he's started up or whatever. Which very cringe, bro. You know. But if you want to be cringe, that's fine. It's just cringe. He's going nuts.
Yeah, Bastiat is effectively like a better version of Destiny at this point.
Bastiat at least like doesn't seem to have like a glitch in his system where he goes haywire for months on end.
Yeah, Destiny, he doesn't say extremely insane things at times in the way that Destiny does that just make you wonder, like, what the fucking hell?
Right.
And actually, that doesn't say shock value things for attention. So, that's a thing.
Anyway, we've been at it for almost 2 hours.
Yeah,
Do we want to
2
wrap
hours
up?
is what we try. 2 hours is what we try to set this thing for.
Cool.
I think we kind of said everything we had to say about all the links I sent to you about the Trump reinstatement conspiracy.
Yeah, we got through those pretty quickly, and then we just started going off on policy talk.
Yeah, because I look at those and I'm just like, it's just like there's no other side. There's no other side to that. It's pseudo law. It's like sovereign citizen bullshit.
Yeah.
You can't debate things that are verifiably false. Yep. I think with the evolution debate, the other side of it is if you teach evolution, then students will grow up to learn eugenics. Evolutionists largely won, and there was a big mid 2010s bump in eugenics supporters. Yes, that's an argument. I think I blatantly misrepresented creationists back in the 2000s, and I apologize for that because it turns out their arguments actually did have some merit. But there is no other side to Trump reinstatement conspiracies.
It's just wrong.
It's just blatantly false. You can't debate.
Look, if you guys want to try an Insurrection 2 Electric Boogaloo, I'm sure the military would be happy to bomb your ass.
Yeah, you'll be destroyed by the National Guard. You're dealing with a military force that's 1 million strong. You're not going to win that. You're dealing with reservists, a number of.
Oh my god, you have the serfs emotes. That's so cute.
Oh yeah, I think I heard something about the serfs.
The serfs are pretty good. They're pretty good. They're a little boring sometimes, but they're pretty good.
Boring is good because I know that I got that. Like I stopped watching Chop. I stopped. Oh, no, they're not watching.
Well, I just I have attention span issues. So sometimes, like as I'm watching their videos, I'll start to like basically just disassociate.
But here's the thing: when you try to be too much of an edgelord, I stop paying attention to you because. Yeah. I stopped paying attention to like what Chapo Trap House have to say after they.
I never watched them. Vosh is about as edgelordy as I can take.
Yeah, the Chapo people out there harassed John McCain's family after he died, and I thought that was too disrespectful.
Harassment's not good.
Yeah, that was
hot
just
take.
Like, don't go after a grieving family after somebody dies. That's that was too shitty.
Yep.
When I otherwise liked the Chapo guys, I think that when it comes to like. I'm trying to think of any decent right-wing pundits out there who are at this point who haven't at this point become neoliberals. And I'm just like, are there any? I'm trying to think up names. I think that the only one out there that comes to mind is Patrick Deenan. Even though I strongly disagree with his views, he's the only one out there who still has anything resembling a brain. Like,
conservatism is kind of brainworms.
It's one of those things out there where I'm just like, are there any like? It's like conservatives who have not become neoliberals.
Like I used to be like centristy. And I admittedly kind of thought I was in the right at the time, but that's because I didn't look very deeply into any of the actual arguments that SJWs had. And once I did, I was like, oh, wait, that makes sense. You have evidence to back it up. Oh, okay. And like, I, slowly shifted more and more left over time because I followed the fucking evidence. When I try and do the same sort of like open-minded thing to actually look into the arguments of people who are on the right and who are conservatives, I literally there's just nothing there. It's all fucking feelings and no fucking facts, no matter what Ben Shapiro says. It literally, nothing follows from each other. There's no real evidence behind almost any of it. And even when there is evidence, it's usually extremely flimsy or flawed, which means you don't use it.
Yeah, when I try to look at, like, conservatives I like, I'm just like, Max
wet-ass P-word.
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm just like, I try to look at conservatives I like, I'm like, oh, Charlie Sykes, Max Boot, Kathy Young, David French, George Will, and I'm like, they all endorsed Biden at this point. Back in the last election. Are they even still conservatives at this point? Probably not, no. they're because Trumpism is intellectually vapid.
Yeah.
It's a personality cult. Joe Walsh is another example of somebody out there who's actually
I'm sure there's probably some old school Republicans out there who just like have a different set of values, which I wouldn't agree with and I probably would think is bad, but it's not like I can't really argue as much against somebody's personal values because that's just what you value, right? It's not necessarily wrong or right. Yeah.
If someone out there says, I specifically believe in strong religious value and having strong religious values, then that's at least an argument. But when it comes to a lot of Christian right values,
if they're not trying to say I am right and they're just saying this is what I value and therefore I am on the right, it's a different thing. It's the Republicans, which is almost all of them, mind you, that are like, no, we have the evidence, we have the facts, we know everything, we're right, we are right, not we believe in this stuff and that's why we do this, but we are correct, when they're just not.
Because they don't have the same intellectual backing that they used to have when they really can't, when they're caught up in a personality cult.
Right.
They can't have thinkers. They can't have ideals on their own side without losing them to the left.
I don't have an opinion on this. Trump hasn't said anything.
Yeah. It's the fact that they're looking at things that, like, everything that they're trying to do is just vitriol without any actual policies because they could not craft a platform last year.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at a party like that, it's unsustainable, and it's something out there that I'm just like, how do you build an actual part? Like, I can understand arguments for the Second Amendment. I can understand arguments for Christian democracy, even though Christian democracy still leans far enough to the left economically that they wind up still agreeing more with the Democrats if they actually put their policies into play.
If they actually read their Bible? What?
Yeah, it's just like...
Hey, did you know the Bible says you shouldn't have interest on loans, by the way? Shouldn't do that, according to the Bible.
Not let you be judged yourself, and that goes against everything that Trump stands for. But when you're looking at something that's just like, the Christian right have lost their battles. A conservative court in the early 1990s, Supreme Court in the early 1990s upheld Roe v. Wade.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't walk back from that because you'd have to find legal arguments to reverse both decisions. You had to deal with the fact that same-sex marriage... I will say,
I have heard criticisms of Roe v. Wade from the left that's basically like it's not a strong enough argument and that maybe it should be repealed so something better can be put in its place. And I don't disagree with that.
The argument is the fact that it was based on a right to privacy, which was an extension of the Fourth Amendment.
Right.
The Fourth Amendment does not specifically state anything about abortion.
It's also not, once again, it's just not the strongest argument legally. We have much stronger arguments now.
But it's been upheld twice over by the
Supreme Court. I'm not saying I want it repealed. I'm just saying if we specifically got something better in place, that would be better.
but you'd need a hell of an argument to repeal it because you need to reverse both decisions.
Right.
And that's difficult because you have to find a legal argument that says we can reverse this and this. It's again, same-sex marriage, that has already happened.
Right.
In the law of the land.
Right.
There's now a fact that you cannot discriminate on the basis of gender identity either. Employment protections for gender identity, those have happened. If you're against LGBT rights, your battles have been lost. Definitively.
Which is not to say they won't still try to fight them. And honestly, you're right about the LGB part of it being basically definitively lost. T is still actively being fought right now. Actively being fought.
At the same time, the employment discrimination part was definitive. That was definitively.
But that's only one piece of that puzzle.
The whole school sports part, that's the battleground at this point. It's over right now.
Yeah, I thought the gender identity thing wasn't as solid as you implied. It's quote, you can still discriminate on gender identity without the Equality Act. Also, you can medically discriminate against people with gender identity. Like, there's definitely still discrimination that can happen with gender identity. It's not nearly as strong as the other protections.
At the same time, they said gender identity, June 15th, 2020, in a 6-3 decision, actually, that you cannot discriminate on the basis of gender identity.
In regards to what?
It is completely illegal in terms of employment and housing.
Bullshit, because there's laws on the books that allow you to discriminate medically.
Okay, so that's different. Medically, that's different. That's different from employment and housing discrimination. Yes, if it's are you talking about medical forms, or are you talking about
a doctor can literally refuse to treat you on the basis of gender identity. Period.
Okay, that's ridiculous.
Which, by the way, people act like this only affects trans and non-binary people. It affects anybody who isn't normative, basically, who isn't a girl in a dress or a guy in a
gender conforming, yeah.
Right. If you're not gender conforming in any way, shape, or form, you could theoretically be caught up in this, cis or not. These protections are important for everyone. They're especially important for trans and non-binary individuals, but they're important for fucking everyone.
Yeah, so if it's about medical discrimination, then that's, there's already
what was where were you getting the employment discrimination thing? Somebody wants to know in my chat. I assume that was a Supreme Court case or something.
Yeah, it's what's the name of the court of the case here? I'm loading it. I typed it up. What is the name?
Not that I don't believe you. I'm just trying to get the source.
I'm looking at the argument. Does it say it? Neil Gorsuch wrote the majority opinion. It was decided June 15th. It's the employment law worldview. Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia.
There we go.
That is the thing. That's the case. Bostock versus
would
Clayton
that just
County.
be in Georgia then, or did that go all the way up to federal?
That was United States Supreme Court. Said Neil Gorsuch wrote the opinion, so that applies to the whole entire country.
All the discrimination laws have the loophole that they can just say literally anything else, but that's a problem with all discrimination law, not specifically just with this.
Yeah, you can say outright that you cannot deny somebody, you cannot fire somebody for being
It just
trans.
means that they have to jump through more hoops to discriminate.
They have to jump through more hoops to do it, but that's the case of that's an issue with at-will employment, which I think is absolutely dumb in the first place, and I think that we should get rid of at-will employment. I think that should be that's a part of American capitalism that I'm not a huge fan of. I think we should get rid of that on basic labor rights. I actually agree with conservatives on the basis that free speech in the workplace should absolutely be protected.
I think that heavily depends on what you include in free speech. I don't think you should be able to sit there and every day call your black coworker a monkey.
Yeah, okay, that you can't do. At that point, it's harassment, but I think that a lot of times hostile work environment, sexual harassment can basically be applied to fucking anything. even if it's notoriously
as
hard
somebody
to
who
prove.
was fired for sexually harassing somebody, I agree that it can go overboard sometimes.
Yeah,
But
hostile
I
environment sexual
just
harassment can encompass
I
fucking anything.
don't think that people should be allowed to just say whatever the fuck they want in the workplace either. Like,
Yeah, I think outright that you should that somebody out there expressing political views that people that their boss doesn't like. I think that's that part. If they're expressing it peacefully and they're not being abusive, that I think should be acceptable.
some
That's
beliefs
where I'll
are
agree with you.
inherently abusive, though.
What? Okay.
Like white supremacy or some shit like that. Like,
Okay, if someone was found to be a Proud Boy, then yes, you should absolutely fire them. That in those circumstances, you should fire them because they're clearly involved in violent and illegal activity.
it's also like, I don't think somebody should be able to fire you for being a Republican, but I do think that people should be able to fire you for, like, being a white supremacist. I do think people should be allowed to fire you for being a Holocaust denier. I do think people should be able to fire you for being an anti-vaxxer. I do think people should be able to fire you if you, like, are blatantly transphobic or homophobic or stuff like that. Because, like, all of that shit contributes to a hostile work environment. It makes people feel unsafe, and it makes you an unsafe person to be around a lot of times.
The stuff, I actually think that Naomi Wolf and Gina Carano got what was coming to them, because
Absolutely.
they were both told repeatedly, "You're being a dumb fuck." And then it's like, oh, Gina Carano makes a comparison about being a Republican to being a Jew during the Holocaust, and
I'm sorry,
gets fired off the
Soapy. That
Mandalorian.
sucks.
And Naomi Wolf gets banned from Twitter for repeatedly saying anti-vax.
I don't know what Gina Carano thought posting, like, memes about the Holocaust being fake or whatever.
No, she
working
didn't say
for
that.
Disney Channel.
No, she didn't say the Holocaust is fake. She said that
I said or whatever.
Yeah. Being a Republican in 2020 was like being a Jew during the Holocaust, and that got her
But
fired.
she posted memes that, like, did, like, Jew conspiracy Nazi shit.
No, that was actually Jeremy Corbyn. That was labor anti-Semitism. That was a mural that Jeremy Corbyn promoted.
Anti-Semitism is anti-Jewish.
Yeah. But it had all the Jewish iconography moved off of it.
No, it didn't.
And
no, it didn't.
I thought they got rid of the hook noses.
No. And she, like, retweeted it or something.
She retweeted it, but it had the most blatant anti-Semitic.
My point is, though, I don't know what she thought working for Disney, thinking she could get away with that and not get fucking fired.
And that's on top of the whole anti-vax stuff and mocking mask wearing.
Yeah. I think we need to wrap up, though. It's been 2 hours, so it was nice talking with you. What's next week's topic? Have we figured that out yet?
Cuba protests. There may be a democracy.
Okay. Foreign policy. Fuck. I'm gonna have to read.
I'm actually Cuban American, so I know this shit. All right. See you next week.
See ya. And see you guys in the chat. It was awesome. I will be back again next week, same time, 10 p.m. Central-ish, shortly thereafter, because we usually get on call together at 10 and kind of do a little chit-chat first and finish getting ready. But yeah, no, feel free to follow me on here if you enjoyed it. Feel free to follow me on TikTok. It's the same username, xValentine, on there, because I post clips from these, or I'm slowly posting clips from these there, as well as talk about other politics stuff and other stuff. Follow me on Twitter. It's just @Valentine. It was good hanging out with y'all. I'd love to do this again. I'm probably gonna do a game stream Monday next week. Maybe. I really want to, because I've actually set Hades up to where I can do the epilogue now, which will be fantastic to do on stream with you guys. And I always talk politics while I video game anyway, because I can't help myself. But it was awesome hanging out with you all. Yeah, games! I do that a lot. I game so much. I just don't do it on stream very much, because I get sucked into the video game and I forget there's a chat sometimes. Or I just start sucking because I'm paying too much attention to chat and not enough on my game. Anyway, it was awesome. I'll see you guys next week to talk about Cuba, apparently. So I got a lot of reading to do this week, which is fine because I'm going down to Texas this weekend, so I got a long drive to read all up on Cuba. But I forget my channel exists the other 6 days. I don't watch almost any streams ever, including the one I mod for, okay? I just don't do it. I don't have the attention span to watch a stream most of the time. I watch YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube. But not a lot of Twitch. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Like I said, feel free to follow me on those other platforms. I think all my links are down below. I think. Most of them. Some of them. My Twitter and my Discord are, and you can find my TikTok through one of those. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I hope you guys had fun. I hope you guys like my hot, spicy fucking takes. So I will talk to you later. Bye!